So without further ado, welcome Joel Gordon.
That's why I like Jordan. Hi, guys. So I looked around the room earlier, and first of all, I feel ridiculous holding a microphone, so I'm just going to tell everybody that right now. But I looked around the room, and I saw some people that I know, Abby, it's amazing how many people that you have in your life that the only reason you know them ultimately is some online presence. It's very strange to me. Twitter is something I started doing just in the last couple of years, and I have this huge group of friends that I communicate with now. And anyway, so Jordan told you my name's Joel Gordon. I grew up about 14 miles that way on the other side of the river in Sherwood. I spent a lot of my life in Scott, Arkansas. We had a family farm out there, and I grew up poor. I was one of those poor kids, and it was a great way to grow up. I loved it, but one of the disadvantages that I had was that I really didn't have any mentors. I really didn't have anybody to sort of guide me along, other than teachers in school. So I always had a lot of respect for educators. As I got older, I started to figure out that I had certain talents, like we all do. There are things that we get interested in, there are things that we want to do. And in my case, my particular talents fell into making things, just things, anything. And it was basically because when you grow up poor, you make your own fun. So having a lot of broken down farm equipment and things like that, building a go-kart, wasn't that hard to do because I had all the ingredients laying around. And I had friends who could buy go-karts, and I saw their go-karts, and I wanted a go-kart. And I wanted a mini bike. So my grandfather, who could weld, had a welder laying around in the barn. I learned to use the welder. And you learn to make things. And I think that's a talent that a lot of people have lost. And I think it's something that we really need again. I'm also a student of history. I love history. And I like to tell people that I think right now in the United States, what we're living in is something close to about 1954, 1955. And what I mean by that is this. At that time in history, we were coming out of a war. We were coming out of a recessed economy. People were struggling. A lot of veterans were coming back. I happen to be a veteran. And they were sort of looking at what was going to happen next. But one of the things that war tends to bring on is a lot of innovation. It's one of those things that we have to do very swiftly. We have to figure out solutions to problems. We do it very quickly, and we're usually shooting straight for the right answer right away. So I think right now we're sort of living through that again. I think that technology is growing really exponentially. We've come off about 20 years of internet right now, where internet was king, and we ended up with companies like Google. You guys heard of Google? Yeah. So it's a company that has basically made a living with big data, which is awesome. We have a lot of big data companies here in Little Rock that are looking to the future now. And those are companies that we all looked to build the future. Well, a company like Google, when they're looking at what they're doing currently, they started thinking about, what's going to happen 5 years from now. And a 5-year plan is a good way to go. You should always be looking that far ahead. So their 5-year plan involves things that they've never been involved in before. And what I mean by that is this. In the last 2 years, and I'm sure a lot of you in this room are aware of this, but those of you who aren't, I'll tell you. In the last 2 years, Google has purchased 8 robotics companies. So why would a big data company buy robotics companies? What does that have to do with big data? Their last big purchase was actually an aeronautics company. What does Google need with an aeronautics company? And it's basically this. So coming off 20 years of heavy focus on the internet, when you start looking at what's next, well, that next thing was what most of us are carrying around in our pockets right now, what Jordan's spinning in his hand. So we've got these smartphones, and smartphones are these incredible tools. And we tend to look at them and go, well, you know, they're how we communicate, they're how we tweet with one another, they're how we you know, I happen to have a calculator on mine, which is really handy. But ultimately what we've got is a computer in our pockets. So if Michael Collins, when he was circling the moon, waiting for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to quit playing golf and get back up to that craft, if he'd had that smartphone in his pocket, he probably wouldn't have been quite as nervous as he was. But, you know, we landed on the moon with slide rules. So if we land on the moon with slide rules, what can we do with these things? If we have more processing power in our pockets than the entire Apollo mission had combined, what are we going to do with that? So we started thinking about making things again, and the United States has been really good at manufacturing. That's what we do. We're kind of famous for it. But in the last few years, we've sort of shipped that overseas. Has anybody here heard this, this term that people are using now called reshoring? You heard that? So I didn't even know there was a name for it, but here's what it is. Reshoring is looking at jobs that have been typically overseas for the last decade, and we're looking at bringing them back. Now, if it's cheaper to make things overseas, why would we bring them back? Because in truth, what we're figuring out is that it's not necessarily cheaper to make it overseas. It's not necessarily cheaper to farm these things out. But what we've been doing is we've been mass producing, and when you're mass producing and there's mass materials and you're making one product, it's cheaper. But we're entering into this new phase. We're entering into kind of an age of innovation. So, and it's a new age of innovation, a new industrial revolution, if you want to think of it that way. And what people are starting to want is that product that is made for them, like your book, it's made for you. You have that app in your phone, the apps that you load into your phones, you load them in not because, hey, this is a great app, you load it in because it's what you need. Well, if Google is stepping into robotics and stepping into aeronautics, the reason they're doing it is because it's what they need as a company. And they need it as a company because they need to provide something for you. So, why robotics? Well, the first thing is this. If you have that phone, if you have connectivity, you have network, then you can control things remotely, right? How many of you have an app on your phone to open your garage door? Anybody here? A couple of people. So that's a really easy idea. If you could put an app on your phone and your kids get locked out and you need to let them in, or it's time to let your dog outside and you can open the doggy door, which they have those now too, then you dial it up on your phone and you check it. Well, this started a few years ago really simply. There was a young man, he was a graduate in North Carolina, and he was working as an IT specialist, and I wish I could remember his name right now, but I can't. He was working as an IT specialist, and he dabbled in hobby hardware. That's something that we used to have. Remember hobbies? Those are awesome. So he was dabbling in hardware, and one of his problems that he had is he kept killing his houseplants. So he got this idea. He took this little thing, and I'm looking at a red box back there by Luke, and I'm wondering what's in it, because I recognize the box. He took a little thing, it's a little ubiquitous piece of hardware called an Arduino. So you guys heard of an Arduino? All right, so an Arduino is a microcontroller. So what a microcontroller does is it just controls things. And people always ask me what's the difference between a microcontroller and a computer, and the basic answer is this. A microcontroller does one thing really well over and over, and a computer doesn't. That's it. That's the big difference, because computers are always doing multiple things. They're processing, they're running data, they're checking results, they're giving you answers. It's doing a lot of actions. But a microcontroller does one thing. It does what you program it to do. We have microcontrollers in cars. That's why mechanics today can't just be shade tree mechanics. They have to understand how computers work. They have to understand technology. And I bet that you're constantly studying to find out what that next thing is. So that's the way the world's progressing. It's growing up. So he took this little Arduino, this little piece of $30 hardware, and he hooked it up to his computer, and he programmed a function into that piece of hardware. And what he did was he created a little piece of hardware that when the soil in his plants got too dry, his plants would send him a tweet that said, "I'm thirsty." That was it. That's all it was. "I'm thirsty." It was a little reminder for him, and it was cute. It was a game, that he said, "I could do this," and he figured it out. So now it's a company that started out with a product called Garduino. So Garduino was just his little creation, and he actually did something crazy. He open sourced it. Anybody know what open sourcing means? All right. So he open sourced this idea. He put it on the internet and said, "Hey, I built this, and you can too, and here's how you do it. Here's everything you need." Well, the trick is, before that, there was this guy named Massimo Banzi. Massimo Banzi is an Italian designer. He actually teaches at a design school in Milan, Italy. And he likes to design in light. He likes to design in electricity. So he was teaching his students, and every time his students would have to build a new idea when they came up with their next project, they would have to begin by breadboarding a circuit. That's an old term. I'm an old guy. I'll explain it to you later. Breadboarding a circuit. So it took time for them to build that circuit, and he thought, I want to save them time, so I'm going to create something that will sort of give them an extra jump ahead, and he created Arduino. So when he created Arduino, he did something crazy. He open sourced it. He just put it out on the internet, said, "Hey, here's this great idea. I created this thing, and now you can build your own, and here's all the schematics, and here's everything you need." And I built my first one on a breadboard, and it cost me about $12. And you have a controller. You have a brain that could do anything from tell you that your plant needs water to run a robot. And I've done all of those things with it. But he put it out online, and for about 2 years, people were building them. They were building them for themselves, and it was crazy. And they said, "Massimo, this is the greatest thing I've ever used. This is amazing." But I noticed that when I built it, this didn't work quite right. So I tweaked it, and they would send him emails, and there was this online community, this online way that we all communicate, and people were slowly improving his product. They were slowly making it better. Well, 2 years down the road, he had a really nice product. And he went, "Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sell it." And what do you think happened? Everybody got really mad. Because they said, "Well, we've been helping you with this for 2 years, and now you're going to turn around and sell it, and you're going to make $1 million. So Massimo Banzi said, "Oh, that's okay. You can do it too." And everybody went, "What? What are you talking about?" "Yeah, you want to make it? Go ahead, make it. Make it. Just don't call it Arduino. That's what I call it." So that was it. So now there's Funduino, Seedduino, Buyduino. There's all of these products out there online. Well, guess how much money Massimo Banzi has made? And I got to meet Massimo about a year ago. He's made millions of dollars. But he didn't patent his product. He didn't patent his product. So let's just jump ahead. 3D printing. People know about that one? 3D printers are awesome. Here's the deal. I've been using 3D printers for a long time. So would it shock you if I said that the first 3D printer I ever used was 22 years ago? Yeah, because we all think it's this amazing new phenomenon, this 3D printing. But the first 3D printer I ever used was a stereolithographic printer. It was about 22 years ago, and I was working for a place called Chicago Scenic Studios. That's what I used to do. I was a scenic artist. So the first stereolithographic 3D printer I ever used was basically a huge box with a bucket full of plastic powder, and there were two lasers, two convergent lasers that would fire, and where those beams crossed, it would fuse that plastic dust into a solid piece. And you would slowly, slowly, slowly build an object inside this dust. Am I getting close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's finish that and then
Yeah.
talk about the launch pad.
Okay. So what you'd end up with is an object. You'd end up with a 3D printed object. Now, if I used that 22 years ago, why is it suddenly in the news? And the reason is this. 7 years ago, a patent ran out. One patent, one small thing. And suddenly everybody could explore the technology. So patents are great ideas, but patents are terrible things if it holds the world back. So one of the best ways that we've been able to improve the world and improve technology is by open sourcing it and sharing these ideas, something that Google has really gotten good at, and they've made a fortune doing it. So it's not like putting a patent on something is going to guarantee that you're going to make a fortune because you own it. But sharing knowledge, improving a product, creating a community is the way to do it. All right?
So, segueing into that, Joel is the executive director of the Launchpad, which is a part of the Innovation Hub in Argenta. And I'll just go ahead and pose a few questions for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what is inside of the Launchpad specifically, and what are some of the things that you can do at the Launchpad with the stuff there?
Let me preface that with I've seen across a lot of areas that there are 4 problems that exist, and I'm really interested in education. So in education, there's 4 problems, and one is we don't have machines or materials. So if we want to teach computers, we don't have the computers. If we can get the computers, we don't have the internet, the infrastructure, the power. If we can get both of those, we don't have a place to put them. And then if we can get all 3 of those things, we still don't have the teachers. So that's true for education. That can be true for industry. That can be true for an entrepreneur. If you have a great idea for something that you want to make that you could sell, but you don't have the tools to make it, then you're kind of sitting in the dirt crying, aren't you? So especially if the thing that you need to make it is going to cost you more than you're going to make on the product. So in the Launchpad, what we're doing is we're creating something called a makerspace. And there's something that's really been growing in the last few years. It's called the Make movement. And I'll be happy to tell anybody more about that after this is over. But in the Launchpad, we're creating a makerspace, and a makerspace is this. It's not a new idea. It's a really old idea. It's something that you saw a lot during the Depression. One guy would have a table saw that somebody needed, and the guy who needed the table saw might have a compressor or some other tool that somebody needed. Now those are both expensive tools, and maybe not any one person is going to own all of them, but a bunch of people get together and they may have a whole shop. So that's the idea. But in this case, we took those 4 problems that I was talking about earlier, and we said, well, let's solve them. Let's get the machinery. Let's get the infrastructure. Let's create a space, and then let's get people in that space who have the knowledge. So in that space, we'll have 3D printers. We'll have laser cutters, computer-controlled tools, CNC mills. We'll have a carpentry shop. We'll have a metal shop. The sort of things that you'd need if you have a product and that product is something that you want to make, then you might need all of these tools, and you might even need some expertise from somebody. So if we create that space and we invite people into that space, I guarantee we'll get someone like you who knows about cars, or we'll get someone like me who knows a lot about metals and machinery and design. We'll get all sorts of experts in every area. I mean, I'm looking around the room and I see folks who know development and software in this room right now. If you can create a space that creates a community where that knowledge is there and people are there because they want to be there, and in that way you have to think about it like a recreation center. It's kind of a weird way to look at it, but ultimately what I want to create, what I want it to be, is a community center like a library or a museum or anything else. And it's a space where you go to learn and to make. You make what you want to make, or you help someone else make what they want to make. So the way we're going to do it is this. We have an education branch. So it's getting kids back into the idea of making things and back into the idea of trades, because trades are valuable. We really need them. Welders are making 6-figure incomes, and welders are one of the most sought-after jobs in Arkansas right now. Coming off that 20 years of the internet, though, we've also, a lot of us have told our kids, we don't want you. This is one of the most embarrassing phrases I've ever heard. I don't want my kids working for a living. What does that mean? I don't want my kids working for a living. And it's that idea, well, I don't want them to be welders because it's a dirty job. Anybody ever seen the show Dirty Jobs? So most of the people that Mike Rowe ends up working with are people who are making fortunes doing dirty jobs because somebody's got to do them. So these jobs are available, and they're not so dirty. You go to an industry like Caterpillar, which is one of the largest industries in Arkansas right now, and I literally mean this, you can eat off the floor. Literally. Not figuratively. I really mean literally this time. You can eat off the floor. It is one of the cleanest spaces I've ever been in my life. They're an organized, amazing manufacturing firm. So manufacturing now is becoming more specific, like that app that you want. You want a product that is for you, you want it the way that you want it, and you want it in a timely manner.
We have time for a few questions, so who has any questions?
Where is it?
It's in Argenta. It's right across the river.
And does it cost?
Yeah. So there you go. It's the education aspect is what we want to do with kids. I like to describe it as a three-legged stool. So we have students and educators, we have makers and artisans, and we have industry. So why would industry need a space like this? I'll give you the quick answer. The quick answer is this. Industries are really busy making what they sell. So if they have an idea of maybe that next product, they can't really do it at their factory if those machines are constantly buzzing making what they sell. But they could come into a space like this with a small team of people and have all these tools available to them, and they can explore that idea and maybe come up with a prototype. If you're an entrepreneur, a maker, an artisan, and you have an idea for a product and you need to make that prototype, you can do that. There's a membership fee, and it's going to be, for regular folks like me, $60 a month. But when you start to look at the potentially hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars that you might spend on equipment like this, $60 a month doesn't sound too bad. If you're a student, it's $40 a month. If you're a senior, it's $40 a month. But here's how that works. Not just anybody can come into this space. In fact, when we're open and we have our memberships, one of the little clauses that is on that membership is you must play well with others. Because it's a community. Because that's how people used to learn. They used to learn by sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, open sourcing, and if one person knows more about welding, but another person knows more about developing software or building a website, then you want those skills. So if you can share skills back and forth, it's a kind of a barter system. But there's also this thing called mentorship. You guys heard of that? So if you create a community like this, then you have built-in mentors. And that's huge. And you start to value the fact that a lot of seniors who aren't working anymore are fonts of knowledge. And they have things that they could share. And at the same time, you may meet a 14-year-old that can design the software that you need to actually make a product that you've dreamed up.
One last question. What time is it open? What's the hours?
It's going to be open from, at this point, we're saying either 9 to 10 or 10 to 10. So it'll be open late at night.
So just to point out, you have a temporary space right now, but there's a bigger space that is
Yes.
under construction right now.
Yeah, we're under construction right now. We'll probably start moving into the space in October. I can't say when we will be officially open because there's so many logistics that go into it. But the temporary space that I'm in right now, I currently have 5 3D printers. One of them is very large. It's MakerBot Z18. It'll print objects a foot wide, a foot deep, and 18 inches tall. I have a small format laser cutter. I'm purchasing a 4-foot by 8-foot CNC mill soon. We have a lot of industry partners that we work with. We partner with ASTA and AMS. We have received some fantastic grants from the governor, from North Little Rock, from the state. Delta Regional Authority is one of our partners. And we were lucky enough to receive an incredible grant from Wingate, who's very interested in the carpentry department. And one of the reasons that they're really interested in it is that idea of youth getting back into the trades, getting back into making. And they're also very excited about the idea of entrepreneurs having an opportunity to have the opportunity to go in and actually use this equipment.
Hi, Eric Caldwell with WebJive. I heard a lot of great things today about what you're doing here, but trying to explain that to somebody after I leave here is a challenge. Could you give me and it's something we do in a referral groups or leads groups do you have like a 15-second elevator speech you could
My
give
elevator
us?
speech?
There you go. That way we have something to spread the word with.
We're creating a 6,000 square foot space that goes from a clean side to a dirty side. What I mean by that is this. On the clean side, it's electronics, it's test equipment, it's 3D printers, it's benchtop laser cutters, things that are hands-off. On the far side of the building, it's the dirty side. That's welding, that's milling, that's carpentry work. All of that equipment is going to be available to people. In the middle is the brain. In the middle is a room called the STEAM Laboratory. The STEAM Laboratory we're doing in partnership with East Initiative. And it's computers, it's programming, it's coding. There's so many moving parts to this. If you want to tell somebody what we're doing, there's 2 words that I'll give you. One is makerspace, which is all one word, makerspace. And the next phrase is the maker movement. Look up those 2 things online and start reading what's out there, and I think you'll be amazed at what's going on in other parts of the country and what we could be doing here right now.
Yeah, and actually, give it up for Joel first. And I want to say, talking about it here is one thing, but you guys have to check it out. Are people able to go visit the temporary space now?
Yeah, if you just call me or
Okay.
send me an email.
Cool. And what's the best way to contact you?
My email is jgordon@arhub.org.
Okay, and is that on the website as well?
It's on the website.
Okay, perfect. Talking about it is one thing. You've got to check it out. It's so cool to see this stuff. I was over there the other day, and we had a visitor from First Robotics come in. And so I walked in, and it was just insane. Joel was working on, I think, a board or something. And they had 3D printers everywhere, and then they brought this First Robotics robot. And I was just in the middle of all of this technology. I was like, oh, my goodness. And it's really cool to see some of the young folks that I've noticed coming through there that it's more than just the access to the equipment, too. It's giving them the permission to say, yeah, go work on it. Because I know as a kid growing up, I asked, like, hey, can I build a robot? Parents were like, you're not going to ever figure that out. No, this is a space that you have all the tools, you have the mentors there, and you can, it's giving young folks permission. Go try it. Go experiment. So talking about it is one thing, but just go check it out. It is absolutely just amazing.
Can I say one thing real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah.
So look at, if you want to see something that is a working model of this, TechShop is a for-profit company. We're not for profit. TechShop is a for-profit company, and imagine if you were an entrepreneur, because a lot of people are doing this through TechShop. There's a story I always like to tell. I'll make it really fast. There's a young woman who designs cake toppers, which doesn't sound like anything really spectacular, but she designs cake toppers, and that is her company now. She sells it through Etsy online. And the sort of things that she does with it is, if you're a bride and a groom and you're having a wedding cake made, you can go into TechShop. She will physically scan the 2 of you and print you to put on top of your cake. She will take a laser cutter and she'll cut the topper out, and it may say happily ever after or something like that, and she'll put that as the topper on your cake. She'll make centerpieces for corporate events. She does it all in TechShop. This is San Francisco, so her membership is $240 a month. But her overhead, other than the material cost, is $240 a month. And she's running an industry, more or less, out of TechShop.
Very cool. So like we do every single week, we end on what's the one thing that we can do as a community to help the Launchpad and the Innovation Hub, which is a whole other thing, but
Mentorship.
mentorship, okay? So one thing that you can do is get plugged in, go check it out, and if you have those skill sets, or if you're interested and you have a young person that is willing and able to learn this stuff, mentorship. Is that right? Perfect. We'll give it up for Joel one more time. And yeah, thank you.